ancient Chinese artifacts that don't make any sense.
Yes. They're made of nephrite jade, which is an extremely hard stone. And they look machined.
Chinese jade artifacts have been sitting in museum cases for decades, labeled, cataloged, and quietly ignored until someone actually looked at them. Joe Rogan's conversation with Cassie Coppersmith ground to a halt over ancient Chinese jade objects so geometrically precise, they've convinced researchers the official story is incomplete. Mainstream archaeology has an explanation. The artifacts disagree with it. This is what Joe Rogan said about the mystery of the Chinese jade artifacts, and why what their construction reveals about the civilization behind them changes everything. There's a wall in the British Museum that stopped Cassie Coppersmith cold. A glass case packed with ancient Chinese jade objects that, at first glance, look like they came off an industrial production line. Perfect cylinders. Exact squares. Surfaces so flat they seem polished by something that had no business existing 5,000 years ago. These are artifacts of the Liangzhu culture, dated to around 3400 BCE, before the wheel was widespread. Bronze had reached China, and before anyone had written a word about how any of this was built. Two types dominate that wall. The first is the Kong tube, tall, with a perfectly circular bore through the center and a crisp square exterior. The second is the Bai disc, a large, flat jade ring, remarkably uniform in thickness, almost eerily level across its entire face. That combination, circular inside and square outside, is not a stylistic quirk. It is a geometric problem. Achieving both simultaneously, in a material this hard, with tools this primitive, demands an explanation that archaeology has quietly sidestepped for decades. So, when Coppersmith laid these objects in front of Joe Rogan, his reaction wasn't confusion, it was recognition. That looks like something made by a machine. The question is whether he was right, and the answer begins with understanding exactly what nephrite jade will and won't let you do to it. Nephrite jade sits at 6 to 6.5 on the Mohs hardness scale. Copper, the hardest metal the Liangzhu had access to around 3400 BCE, sits at roughly 3. Most of their stone implements barely clear 4. So the material they were supposedly carving with was, in every meaningful sense, softer than the material being carved. But what jade actually does is resist. It doesn't chip cleanly like flint or split predictably along a grain. It is dense, interlocked in its crystalline structure, and it absorbs force rather than yielding to it. Professional lapidaries today use diamond-tipped rotary tools to work nephrite. Even then, it is slow. So the question becomes uncomfortably specific. How did a culture without iron, without diamond abrasives, and without rotary machinery produce objects that, to every modern eye that encounters them, look like they were shaped by something that understood geometry precisely? That question is sharper than it seems, because when archaeologists tried to answer it experimentally, the results were uncomfortable. The experiment is straightforward enough in concept. Take a bamboo tube, feed it abrasive slurry, press it against a jade surface, and rotate. The Liangzhu, according to conventional explanation, used exactly this method. Bamboo as the drill core, wet sand or crushed quartz as the cutting medium, and patience as the engine. And bamboo can abrade jade. That part is technically true. But what happens when researchers place the bore produced by that bamboo drill directly beside the bore of an actual Liangzhu Kong tube? The difference is not subtle. The experimental bore is ragged, slightly elliptical, scarred with the irregular drag marks researchers expect from a tool that flexes under pressure. The artifact bore is smooth, consistently circular, and clean in a way that suggests something that didn't flex at all. That is not a matter of interpretation. That is a visual before and after comparison archaeologists themselves produced, and then had to explain away. Now compound that with a separate test from the 1930s, where researchers used abrasive string to cut through a block of jade roughly the size of a basketball. A full week of continuous cutting to get through one block. That single data point reframes the entire production scale problem before we've even discussed how many artifacts exist. The Liangzhu weren't occasionally producing these objects. They were producing them by the thousands, over centuries, with bores that put bamboo experiments to shame. The tools don't produce the result we can see. And the result we can see keeps getting more precise the closer researchers look. The bamboo bore test already told the researcher the method doesn't match the result. But method is only half the problem. The other half is geometry. And geometry is where this stops being a matter of degree and becomes something close to impossible. In Kong tube, the outer profile is a precise square. The inner bore is a perfect circle. Both conditions exist simultaneously in the same object, carved from one of the hardest stones available to any ancient culture. That is not a decorative flourish. That is an engineering constraint. Achieving a true circle and a true square on the same axis, at the same time, in the same material, requires that every stage of shaping actively avoids distorting the other dimension. With modern machinery, that is a lathe problem. With abrasive string and bamboo, it is closer to a logical contradiction. And then there are the bi-discs, roughly 9 inches across, ground flat on both faces. The flatness is the point. Flatness is actually one of the hardest properties to achieve in handworked stone, because pressure distributes unevenly, tools flex, and the craftsman has no mechanical reference plane to work against. Modern machinists use precision ground surface plates for exactly that reason. The Liangzhu had none of that. What they apparently produced anyway are surfaces that researchers describe as beyond hand tool tolerance, meaning the flatness exceeds what the available tools should theoretically be capable of delivering. This is the moment in the Rogan episode where the conversation shifts register. Coppersmith walks through the geometry. Rogan looks at the artifact image and the response is immediate. That looks like a machine, a genuine observation that the output matches what industrial processes produce and does not match what patient hand grinding produces. The shape, surface, and bore are wrong for the tools, and once researchers accept that, a second problem materializes immediately, one that makes the geometry question look almost manageable by comparison. The geometry problem was already staggering. One artifact, perfectly bored, impossibly flat. But here is where the conversation between Rogan and Coppersmith takes a turn that reframes everything. It was never just one artifact. Liangzhu burial sites contain thousands of jade pieces per tomb. Archaeologists have excavated individual graves stacked with Kong tubes and bi-discs, each displaying the same geometric consistency, surface quality, and the same bored precision, replicated across an entire funerary industry operating for centuries. If producing a single Kong tube by hand required weeks of painstaking abrasive grinding, and the 1930 string experiment already told researcher what that timeline looks like, then sustaining thousands of identical pieces across generations demands a production apparatus of almost incomprehensible scale, a workshop system, dedicated labor, consistent tooling, standardized output. And yet the Liangzhu left no evidence of any of that infrastructure, no tool caches matching the precision required. The artifacts simply appear, in volume, in tombs, without an obvious industrial origin story to explain them. That is the second shock Coppersmith lands in the episode, and Rogan's reaction shifts from curiosity into something closer to genuine unease. Because one anomalous object can be explained away, thousands of them, perfectly consistent, cannot. Liangzhu, it turns out, was not alone. Egypt was doing something almost identical. Same era, roughly 3400 BCE. Different continent, entirely separate culture, and yet pre-dynastic Egyptian tombs were being stocked with extraordinarily precise hard stone vases, diorite bowls, basalt containers with walls thin enough to be translucent, drilled with tolerances that modern lapidaries find difficult to explain even with current equipment. And here is what Coppersmith flags that makes Rogan go quiet. Neither the Liangzhu nor the pre-dynastic Egyptians show an obvious developmental sequence for these objects. With most technologies, archaeology can trace the learning curve: crude early attempts, gradual refinement, mature output. The pottery gets better, the metalwork improves. But with these hard stone artifacts, the sequence is missing. The precision appears fully formed in the burial record. Objects that look ancient in the sense of age, but somehow not ancient in the sense of capability. So Coppersmith's hypothesis, and this is the moment the conversation pivots, is that both cultures were treating these pieces as inherited treasures, cherished objects passed down or found from somewhere earlier. Neither the Chinese craftsmen nor the Egyptian artisans may have been the originators. They may have been the custodians. That is the frame Coppersmith places over both civilizations simultaneously, and it reorients the entire mystery. The question is no longer just who made the Liangzhu jade. The question becomes whether anyone in either culture actually knew how to make it at all, or simply knew how to revere it, which puts the real makers somewhere further back. Here is where the timeline gets genuinely complicated, because archaeology itself has already pushed the jade tradition further back than most people realize. The Hongshan culture, operating across what is now Inner Mongolia, was producing jade artifacts between roughly 4,700 and 2,900 BCE. That is centuries before Liangzhu even begins. And in September 2024, archaeologists excavating a burial mound there announced what Sun Jin Song, director of the Inner Mongolia Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology, described as the largest stone burial mound from the late Hongshan culture ever found in the region. Inside it, a jade dragon, 6 inches long, precisely worked, technically demanding. Now, that discovery matters here for a specific reason. It doesn't resolve the mystery, it deepens it. Because if precision jade craft was already present in the Hongshan tradition before Liangzhu, researchers haven't found the origin point, they just moved it backwards again. That is the thing about this particular archaeological problem. Every time researchers trace the skill set to an earlier culture, the question simply migrates. Who taught the Hongshan? Jade, used on the land that became China, stretches back more than 10,000 years, predating conventional estimates of when Chinese civilization emerged by roughly 4 millennia. At some point, the archaeological consensus runs out of cultures to attribute the capability to, and the attribution begins to feel more like a placeholder than an answer. Coppersmith's framework treats this as meaningful rather than incidental. The lost civilization argument isn't that ancient Chinese people were incapable, it's that the capability appears before the cultural scaffolding required to develop it independently. The tools trail the objects, the knowledge precedes the known knowers. Archaeological consensus assigns the Kong and Bai to Liangzhu, and that attribution is real, documented, and supported by excavation data. But what it describes is possession, mastery of a tradition. It does not describe invention, and probably not a coincidence that no one has successfully demonstrated the full manufacturing sequence with period-accurate tools. China is not alone. That's what stops the conversation cold the moment Rogan and Coppersmith zoom out. Because the same signature appears everywhere. Pre-dynastic Egypt with its diorite bowls and basalt vases. The Andean stone blocks at Pumapunku, shaped to interlocking tolerances that baffle engineers today. Megalithic sites across Malta, Turkey, and the British Isles, all carrying that same fingerprint, precision that arrives before the documented capacity to produce it. So what are the odds? One anomaly is a curiosity. 2 anomalies sharing a timeline is a coincidence. But when the same precision versus tools, gap surfaces across cultures with 0 documented contact, separated by entire oceans, that stops being coincidence and starts demanding a different kind of explanation. Coppersmith's argument, the spine of her entire Secrets in Stone channel, is that all of this points toward a single upstream source. A civilization sophisticated enough to work nephrite, granite, and diorite to fine tolerances, operating before the flood horizon that shows up in mythology from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica. The jade artifacts aren't a Chinese mystery, they're a chapter in a global one. And the timeline matters here. The Liangzhu pieces date to roughly 3400 BCE. Egypt's hard stone vases cluster around the same era. The implication Coppersmith draws is that both cultures received something, inherited objects, inherited technique, or inherited knowledge from a common predecessor that the flood erased from the record. Rogan's response to this framing is telling. He doesn't push back on the global pattern, he pushes forward, asking why, given all of this, nobody has done the precision measurements, the actual tolerance studies, that would either confirm or collapse the claim entirely. Here is what makes this moment in the conversation genuinely uncomfortable. Everything discussed so far rests on a visual claim. Rogan and Coppersmith are looking at artifacts and saying, that precision looks machine level. And the striking thing is, they are probably right to be suspicious. But probably right is not the same as measured, quantified, or published. So here is the question that sits at the center of this entire discussion. Has anyone actually measured these artifacts to engineering tolerances? The answer, as best as current literature shows, is no. There is no published peer-reviewed study that takes a Liangzhu Kong tube, or bidisc, runs precision metrology across its surfaces, and reports the variance in flatness, circularity, or bore diameter in microns or fractions of a millimeter. The core claim, that these objects exceed what hand tools could produce, remains, technically speaking, an inference from appearance rather than a confirmed specification. And that gap is exactly what Rogan fixates on. He pushes on why mainstream archaeology hasn't commissioned that study. The tools exist: laser surface profilometers, coordinate measuring machines, computed tomography scanners, all routine in materials science. The artifacts are accessible in major institutional collections. The test is not expensive relative to standard excavation budgets. But the test hasn't been done, or if it has, the results haven't surfaced in accessible literature. That is not proof of conspiracy. It might simply be a reflection of disciplinary priorities. Archaeology measures cultural context, not machining tolerances. But the absence leaves the central mystery completely open. A single rigorous tolerance study would either validate the anomaly or dissolve it. Neither outcome has arrived. Here is where the mystery actually lands. Not in 3400 BCE and in a British museum display case. Right now, in the gap between a question anyone could ask and an answer, no institution has delivered. One rigorous tolerance study, conducted with instruments already standard in materials science, would transform this conversation from speculation into data. Either the anomaly holds under measurement, forcing archaeology to explain a precision no known Liangzhu tool could produce, or it dissolves and closes the case cleanly. But if the measurements confirmed the anomaly, the implications extend far beyond Jade. The conventional timeline of human civilization rests on one core assumption: that complexity emerged gradually, linearly, from simple tools upward. Artifacts that break that assumption don't just challenge one culture's history, they challenge the entire model. That is exactly why Rogan went quiet. Not because Coppersmith proved anything, because if it's answered wrong for the conventional timeline, unravels considerably more than a wall of artifacts in London. The study hasn't happened, the question is still open, and the artifacts are still sitting there, waiting. The real question was never how they cut Jade. It was who taught them to ESS. No mission is funded to answer that. Progress stalls because the answer threatens the timeline. But momentum is shifting. And somewhere in a British museum case, a Kong tube sits perfectly circular, perfectly square, waiting. If that shocks you, watch next.